Okay, here are some examples of the factoring we're going to remind ourselves how to do from Algebra 1 and 2. Notice my flow chart. We're always going to see if there's a common factor, then how many terms, and under each of the terms I can determine what type of factoring I may have. So that will help. So I look at the first one, and I'm looking for a common factor. It doesn't have one, but it's two terms. So my choices are difference of squares or sum and difference of cubes. 144 is a perfect square, and x squared is a perfect square, so it's a difference of squares. Difference of squares means two different parentheses, 1 plus 1 minus. I square root the first term and get x squared. I square root 144 and get 12, and there's my factoring. Okay, the next one, there is no common factor, but there are three terms. I have a leading coefficient larger than 1. That's the harder of the two because that's a split the middle. So when you have this scenario, you're going to multiply that 4 times the 1 and 4, and think of all the things that multiply to 4, that add to 4. And so this is positive 4, so this would be positive 2 and 2. Now, when you have two of the same factor, this is your reminder. It's a perfect square trinomial. If you can remember that, you can go straight to the answer, which a perfect square means I've squared something. Square root of 4x squared is 2x. The square root of 1 is 1. That sign right there in front of the 4x is what I put between them. Now, if you don't recognize that, and that's okay, I can split the middle. I can take that 4x and split it into the 2x and 2x. So 4x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 1. Now I'm going to split it into 2. I'm going to factor by grouping. So now, I look for a common factor between the first two. It's a 2x. Divide it out, and I'm left with 2x plus 1. Bring down that plus. Nothing in common, so I always write a 1. 2x plus 1. You know that you have factored this correctly when the two factors in parentheses are the same, so you write one of those, 2x plus 1. And then 2x plus 1 is the other one, and there's that perfect square trinomial, two of the same thing. Okay, this next one, look for a common factor. They each have an x in common. Divide it out, and I'm left with x minus 4. These are both linear factors, which means it's a power of 1, so I'm done. Then the fourth one, I look for a common factor. They each have an x in common. I'm going to divide that out and get x squared plus 4x minus 21. So x, I can't forget the x. That's part of my answer. Now I look at what's left here is a 3-term polynomial and a leading coefficient of 1. So that's the easy. I think of things that multiply to a negative 21, which is, I think about the sign, 1 and 21. And I then have no 2, but 3 and 7. And that is it. So if I'm subtracting or need a negative, one of these needs to be negative, and I need it to add to positive 4. So that's negative 3 and positive 7. So x minus 3, x plus 7, and there's my factoring. Okay, then number 5, I'm looking for a common factor. There is not one. So now I'm going to go to how many terms? There's 3 terms. The leading coefficient's larger than 1, so that's to split the middle. So I'm going to multiply 9 times 2, or negative 2, and get negative 18. And now I get the factors of 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. And I want them to subtract, or a negative 18 to get negative 3. So that would be positive 3 and negative 6. Now I'm going to split that middle. 9x squared. Order does not matter. So I'm going to do plus 3x minus 6x minus 2. Now I'm going to group them and factor by grouping. The first two terms have a 3x in common. Leave me 3x plus 1. Bring down that negative. A negative 6x and a negative 2 have a negative 2 in common. Remember, we're dividing by a negative. So negative 6x divided by negative 2 is positive 3x. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is positive 1. We know we've done it right because, oh my goodness, because the parentheses are the same. So I write the repeated parentheses, 3x plus 1, and then this outside 3x, and this outside minus 2, and there's my factoring. Okay, now number 6, look for a common factor. There is not one. I have 4 terms, and under 4 terms, it's just by grouping. So now I'm going to divide them by 2 and 2, and I look at the first two. They each have an x squared in common. Leaves me x plus 5. Bring down that plus. Between 4 and 20, they have a 4 common factor. Leaves me x plus 5. Remember, the parentheses are the same, so that is one of the factors. And then these outside factors, I have x squared plus 4. I always have to check when I have a power greater than 1, and I have 2 terms, and x is squared. It's not a difference of square because I'm adding, so I'm done. And now the last one I'll take a look at, and it is no common factor, but it's 2 terms, so I look under my 2 terms, and x is cubed, and it's subtraction, so this is a difference of cubes. Remember, on difference of cubes, I use the acronym SCUMS. So the first thing we do is we cube root x cubed, cube root negative 27, and now we scum that. The S stands for square the first, x is first, so I square it. C stands for change that sign, so it's plus. M stands for multiply these together and get 3x. And the last S is square the last, which is negative 3, so it becomes positive 9. And that is the 7 types of factoring you have to be aware of.